Hello and bienvenidos. My name is Rosie Chinea-Shaver, and I'm the Executive Director of the Catholic Association of Latino Leaders. I'm so excited that you're with us today, listening to our new series, El Cafecito. This series is meant to be bite-sized conversations about our Hispanic Catholic faith. This is the last session in our first series about Lent. I'm excited to get to know all of you and for you to get to know us better through these conversations. As we begin all good things, I'm going to lead us in an opening prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Almighty and ever-living God, you invite us deeper into your world, your people, your Lent. May this time be one of outward focus, seeking you in those we often ignore. Help us live a Lent focused on freedom, generosity, and encounter. Give us hearts hungry to serve you and those who need what we have to give. We ask this in your most holy name. Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Now I'd like to introduce our guest, Matthew Hansen. He is the General Counsel and Corporate Secretary of the Catholic Community Foundation of Los Angeles. Matthew is responsible for the direction and management of the legal and operations departments. This includes governance, human resources, facilities, information technology and security, legal service providers, and the negotiation of contracts related to those areas. He received his BS from Georgetown University School of Foreign Service and International Politics, Law and Ethics, and his JD from George Washington University Law School. Prior to joining CCF-LA, Matthew had a varied practice. His experience in representing high net worth individuals, charitable and religious organizations, financial institutions, and governments on a variety of matters, including civil litigation and estate planning. Matthew is also the chair of the board of the Catholic Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Los Angeles. Thank you, Matthew, so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So before we dive into Lent, I would love to hear more about CCF-LA, what it is, its mission, and specifically your role. I mean, it sounds like you do a lot.
I do.
Would love to hear more about the organization.
Well, the Catholic Community Foundation is the largest Catholic-based community foundation in the United States. So let's start off with what are community foundations? They are just organizations that have been designed to pull donations together into a very coordinated investment and grant-making facility, dedicated primarily to social improvements. We are a Catholic organization, so we are organized as a religious corporation, and we're subject to the canon law of the Roman Catholic Church. Our mission is to empower charitable individuals and organizations across cultures, and that's really important, across cultures, because we have a universal church, and generations through professional philanthropy management that allow clients to develop and sustain their philanthropy in support of Catholic values. At the end of the day, we are really here to make it easier for donors to support philanthropy based on those Catholic values. My job over here, you saw that I wear a lot of hats, but specifically to make sure that the organization functions on a day-to-day basis, that's the operations side, and to work with the donors and the agencies to make sure that when they decide to invest in funds with us, or for us to own those funds, that we make sure that we donate those funds to the charities of their choice and that we comply with all laws, both civil and religious, in doing so.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Just before I started working here at Call, I hadn't heard about you guys, and just to learn over the last almost 8 months about what you do and how you do it, and how you empower people to give from their wealth, and also like investing. It's just been very powerful for me, and to see your role also, like, it is very cool to kind of understand and unpack these last 8 months, and I'm excited to kind of grow in that relationship with you all.
Well, thank you. And we're so pleased to be able to work with Call.
Awesome. So I know you're Latino, and I'd love to hear about your faith journey and your family and get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, so I know that the last name Hanson doesn't scream Latino, right? But yes, my mother is from Panama. I have grown up in a bilingual household my entire life. And so, eating arroz con pollo and tamales was just as much as having the baked ham with the baked potatoes, right? So I am very much in love with my Latino heritage. And that includes a very specific faith journey, right? So my family is both from Panama, and my mother's side both from Panama and Nicaragua, and there's a very strong faith tradition in both Panama and in Nicaragua, both around Jesus Christ, who is our Savior, but around the Virgin Mary as well. And so I grew up with lots of rosaries in the house, something called La Purísima, where we celebrate the Virgin in the month of December. And we have prayer services and prayer organizations. I will say there's a lot of eating and a lot of socialization around that too. So for me, the Catholic faith has always been something that has been positive. It's been like a blanket enveloping and protecting me, and something that I can enjoy with, my family and my friends. I attended a Catholic high school. I went to Loyola High School here in Los Angeles. Go Jesuits. And then I went on to a Roman Catholic university, Georgetown University. I didn't go to a Catholic law school. I went to a secular law school, but I am currently getting my LLM in tax at Loyola University. And so Loyola Law School. So, the Catholic faith for me has both been family, but it's also been in my education and the formation of who I am. And it's just been a very easy relationship, a relationship that I really value and treasure, and that I can incorporate now into, what I do with my own children, who I send to Catholic schools. And I'm just very fortunate that I've had a faith that is universal, that is a worldwide faith. So if I visited my family in Panama, or I went traveling, to South America or to Europe or to Asia, there's always a Catholic church. And if I need to pray, if I need to have a moment of respite, I can go into a church anywhere around the world and know that there are people there who share my faith and my values. It's very powerful.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you've got 2 young kids, right?
I do. I
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
little boy, Connor, and a little girl, Sophia. They are the absolute lights of my life. They are what make me wake up every morning and want to do good in the world. I want to be the best example for them as possible. That's why I came to the foundation,
Yeah,
to
that's awesome.
be an example to my children.
Yeah, I have a daughter named Sophia also. So when you said that, it just brought a smile to my face. And I say the same thing, like she is the light of my world. And so I share those sentiments with you. And your wife is Cuban, right?
She is. My wife is Cubana, and so I couldn't get away from the Latino heritage, right? And so and that's been really important for us. That way, our children grow up with both languages. They understand how we're such a great country because we're made up of people from all over around the world. It makes it very easy for us to communicate with each other. And I get to eat great food all the time as well. And she makes a good flan, and I have my cafecitos, my cortaditos in the morning. So I'm very lucky.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's get to the topic of the day today. So almsgiving. There's so many scriptural passages that come to my mind when I think about this. I think about the widow's mite. I think about the Good Samaritan, and other ones come to my mind as well. Can you unpack the Catholic roots of almsgiving for us?
Sure. So the Catholic Church looks at almsgiving as one of the pillars of Lent, right? And we have to say, well, what is almsgiving? What does it really mean? Well, for the church, it means being a witness to fraternal charity and a work of justice pleasing to God. That's part of the catechism of the church. That's great. We hear those. We hear so being a witness, pleasing God. What does it mean on a day-to-day basis? Well, it means the act of donating money or goods to the poor, or doing other acts of charity. That's what almsgiving is. We want to understand that word and why it's so important to us as Catholics. So we do it during Lent. We also put money in the tray. There's other things that we do, but I think that we should understand the root of that word, almsgiving. So alms means mercy and pity, and pity. And the root of charity also comes from the Latin word caritas, meaning love. So when we talk about almsgiving, it's really like the love that you give to others through mercy, through acts of charity. So it's really an outward side of Christian love. During Lent, we know we sacrifice something, right? Whether it's coffee or meat or something, but it's really meant to show that we are giving something up so that we can help others. It's a way for us to strengthen the bonds of our community. It's one of the great things about Lent. We really come together as a community, and almsgiving is a great way of doing that.
And I see this also as like it can spark the beginning of our almsgiving if we haven't been giving. or it can deepen that experience of giving back to the community philanthropically or through service.
Absolutely. There can be formal ways of doing it, and Lent's a more formal way that we talk about it more. But it's part of our tradition. It's an everyday part of our tradition. But you're absolutely right. If say we've gone down a different path, it's a way to formally remember, yes, this is the time that we should remember to help our neighbor. Christ spent 40 days, suffering, and we can help people during this time through just giving up something, right? If we're not going to go to Starbucks, how about we put that dollar into a rice bowl or some type of charitable bowl, helping other people?
When I was thinking about this topic too, I was thinking about what are the distinctions and similarities between almsgiving and philanthropy?
Yeah, well, I think charity for us here in the United States, it's really based off of our Western tradition. It has to do with, representing Christian love, representing God's love of man, man's love of God, and our love for our fellow, people. While almsgiving itself is the act of voluntarily giving alms or donating to the poor, philanthropy is a form of altruism that's not necessarily religiously related, right? It really consists of a private initiative, an act by an individual or a group to do something for the public good, and it tends to focus on the quality of life. So while there's a lot of similarity there, it's not the same thing, right? So charity is more religiously based in our tradition, although there's definitely a lot of overlap. And I think today we can professionalize, charitable giving into philanthropy. We can say we have these opportunities on making a private initiative, maybe opening up a donor advised fund here with the foundation to do an act of public good. And maybe that public good is establishing scholarships or providing food for a homeless food shelter, or an abused women's shelter, which we do fund, or even wells for water in different parts of the world. So we combine with the very definite specific types of charitable gifts, and then we professionalize it into an initiative. So I think that's where you'll see the similarity between giving and alms and then philanthropy, because then we work together and we focus on a public good, which for us here at the foundation has a religious component of serving others.
Yeah, and I think about like how do we as individuals, like that are Catholic, discern that heart, right? How do we discern the charitable heart, regardless of our financial status? Whether it's through almsgiving or on a larger stage through the philanthropy.
Well, I think that we have to remember that we give alms all the time. We are philanthropists. Each of us is a philanthropist when we donate $1, $5, $10, or whatever it is into the basket. When we put a quarter into that box that we see at the store to help others. You don't have to be a Rockefeller. You don't have to be Bezos. You don't have to be, a billionaire to be charitable and to be a philanthropist. You give what you can, and you do so for the good of others. You're a philanthropist. Even, we have a large group of Latinos who live in this country who send remittances back to home, right? To help family, to help friends, to help communities. That's a form of philanthropy, and that we should recognize. We should say, you're making a profound impact on your community by sacrificing here. When you send money back to your country, when you give money at your church, when you do these things, you're making a sacrifice. And the sacrifices, I think, is even more profound for somebody who doesn't have a really high financial status, because it hurts a little bit more. We talked about the widow's mite. That was the example that you gave. It hurts a little bit more, when you make very little, but you're giving a large portion of your income versus if you're a billionaire and you gave that same amount, right? So I think that we have to recognize that philanthropy is something that we all do, and we should applaud people who give something because they don't have to, right? And they do it because of whether it's religion for us as Catholics, because we're taught that we should serve the poor and we should be men and women for others. But many of us are philanthropists without even realizing that we're philanthropists.
Yeah, it's powerful actually to think about. And I think about our young adults too. I think about how do we also show that in our family life? Like, how do we allow our young kids, like my 10-year-old and your kids, like that this is something that is ingrained into who we are, and not just we do this when we reach this certain amount of flow of money and income. But this is like a part of who we are as Catholics and who we are as just people. Like we need to serve those around us from a place of love and belovedness. So yeah, anyhow, what you're saying just triggers stuff in me, which I'm really grateful for.
Thank you
so
for this opportunity.
Yeah. So I know the church asks us to give 10% of our income to charity per year. Do you know where this came from and why this is important?
So I think that number has just developed over time. You asked me a little bit about this before, and there's many Christian traditions ask for a percentage of your income. And it's really meant to say, okay, this is the portion that we have to give to God and to support our fellow man. This is the portion that we say we want to give to others. I want to focus less on the 10% though, and more on just the act itself. For some people, 10% sounds like a really high number. Some people say that I just can't, right? I've got rising gas prices. My apartment eats up 75% of my income. There's no way that I can give 10%. Well, the act of giving $1, $10, 1%, 2%, I think that's really just as powerful as giving the 10%. I think that we're also from a tradition, the Catholic Church doesn't make it a requirement to be Catholic that you have to give 10%. Some other churches do actually require tithing, and if you don't tithe, then you're not in good standing. We don't make that hard number, and I think it's because we recognize that while we would like you to give that amount, you give what you can, and you can also serve in other ways. Being charitable, being a philanthropist doesn't necessarily mean that it's dollars. It also means that you're doing something, you're volunteering, you're giving of your time, because your time is also part of your treasure. You could be working at that time. You could be spending time with your family. So when you say, I'm going to take a day off of work, or I'm going to go in on a Saturday and I'm going to help serve food to the homeless, I'm going to work in a shelter, I'm going to tutor somebody, I'm going to go on a mission for a week in Calcutta, or I'm going to dig a well, that has there's a financial component to it, right? Because the organization would have to pay somebody if you didn't do it. You're giving up your own income, so you're being charitable there. That sacrifice that you're making has real dollars that are attached to it. And so I just don't want us to focus in on the 10% of our income. It's like, okay, I have to write 10% off each year. Like, you're going to deduct that on your tax return. When you're giving of your time, you're also giving of your treasure. And so I think many of us, if we look at it that way, we probably give more than 10% of our income. Because if we figure out how much we make per hour and we're donating that time, that's part of our income. We could be working, we could be doing something else. So many of us give probably more than 10% of our possible income by giving of our time. Although I don't think any organization will say no to the dollars either.
Of course, of course. When I think about like my family too, my husband and I, when we consider like who we're going to give to every year, we really pray through, first off, who has a great need in our society and at the time we're living, but then also who has impacted us in our journey of faith and in our life that we want to give back to so that they can affect people also in a very positive light. So for example, I went to UC San Diego for my undergrad, and we give to their Newman Center because it changed the course of my life and what I'm doing for the church now. Or I volunteered for a shelter in El Paso for a year after I graduated. So we give money to that organization now too, because not only do they need it, but we want to pay it forward. So anyhow, as people discern, like, where is God calling them to give financially, really considering like, where have I been moved and how can I affect change in those areas? Could be good areas for folks to think about and consider. Do you have any advice on that? Like, how should people discern that? Like, where should their money go?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right when you talk about what are those causes, what are those organizations that move you. I think it's important for us when we're looking at those organizations to say, who do we have a tie with? Who has given to us, right? And I'm not talking financially, I'm talking spiritually. The act of giving is not a one-way street. It's not me writing a check to say, I'm going to give 10% of my income every year to this organization. And I think this year I'm going to give to them because they invited me to an event. That's not really it. It's what is going to feed our soul. It's what's going to bring us closer to God. what is going to allow us to be a servant to others? Because that's, at least from my own, religious experience, I want to serve others. I want to be a person who serves others. God has given me many gifts. And if I can give something back, anything back, whether it's my time or my treasure, I think I am enriched as a person. And then I look and see who has fed my soul, what mission there resonates with me. I have two little children. They came to me as a blessing. God takes us down different journeys. And I look at organizations that help children. I look at Catholic Big Brothers Big Sisters. I look at the different schools. I look at what are the organizations that make an impact on other people, and make me feel like I'm making an impact on the lives of other people. And that's how I decide where I'm going to give my time or my treasure.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for insight on that too. I think as people discern this, it's helpful for them to hear our perspectives. So they know steps on like, okay, this is what I can do to figure out where my money should go or where my hard-earned money should go, honestly. So how can Lent help us grow in being year-round almsgivers and philanthropists?
Well, I think it's a launching pad, right? It's like, okay, I'm remembering now that this is a part of my faith. It's not just going to mass, it's not just saying the rosary, but that there's a very active part of our faith. It's remembering during this period of time that when we sacrifice, we are giving something up for God, and we're giving part of who we are to our community, to our family, to our friends, and people who are in more of a need. And we make that sacrifice, we are helping somebody else, or we can help other people. So I think it's a real formal approach. It lets us use it as a launching pad to go throughout the year. That's how I look. I've always thought Lent was a great period of time. I haven't looked at it as the sad time that some people look at Lent. It's not a sad time. It's an opportunity. It's a time to really help our community and help other people.
Absolutely. And tied to that too, another tenet is prayer, and allowing our prayer to really guide our almsgiving and being a philanthropist. I think we've already said it, but I think is helpful for people just to remember
Absolutely.
as they discern. What experience have you had within your own cultural tradition during Lent, specifically around almsgiving?
Well, I think that here in the United States, we may not realize, but we're doing almsgiving during Lent and all year round, right? When we go to the fish fry on Friday at our local parish, we're donating money not just for that dinner, which we're coming together as a community, but to help feed the poor. Oftentimes it's tied to a food drive, and it's a very specific time where we can engage in acts of charity. There are so many ways that Latinos do so during the 40 days of Lent. It's a somber time for some people, but many families in my own Panamanian tradition like to observe the rituals. That starts with, the Miércoles de Ceniza, which kicks off Carnival. There's a time where before Lent we have these different parties, but oftentimes tied to these parties, there's a giving of alms. It's remembering what we're going to do. My own children today, the Catholic schools take up almsgiving in a very formal way, where the kids bring in these rice bowl boxes where we donate spare change, and we talk to our children about the importance of helping others and almsgiving during this period of time. But I think of there's different times at the Pésame during Good Friday. People go to church, but oftentimes they meet with their families to pray, and oftentimes they fast, and maybe they also donate food during that time. There's a lot of food donations that seem to go on during Lent, because people, one, maybe they've given up food, but two, they remember that we're supposed to help our brothers and sisters, right? There's different the Via Crucis dramatizations where people are carrying the cross. People then oftentimes meet up and they pray after this, and they probably will make donations as well. In my own family, we did a lot of rosaries during this time, a lot of rosaries. And the rosaries often had a charitable component. We wouldn't just go to somebody's house to do a rosary, but we'd also take up a collection on our own, and then give it to people in need. And my family, oftentimes they would do it for children in Nicaragua, for example. My grandfather was from Nicaragua. And so we would do these collections to help kids in orphanages, specifically in Nicaragua, that we had ties to. And it goes again to where do we have ties, right? What calls us? But it's a very formal time where, we can think about how we want to help other people, and we can meet as a community in more active ways. My family just liked to do rosaries, and we would do it then.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think about my own cultural tradition, also just being Puerto Rican and Cuban, and a lot of what you said actually resonates with me as well. And really, I think for us, I learned through my mom specifically the act of service at our local parish. And during the Lenten season, we did different drives at our parish. And looking at American Martyrs now, where I go to church with my family, you're right. They did a food drive recently, and we actually did a shoe drive also to donate shoes. In a few weeks, there's a packing of food to send to Guatemala. We have a tie as a parish to that country. So you're spot on, and it's interesting to hear because it resonates with me as well. And thinking about what we're doing here at CALL, also on the Catholic Association of Latino Leaders, like our desire to really form the next generation of leaders, of young adults, and also help sustain and grow our CEOs and presidents who are Catholic, in the secular world. It's incredible, and having people give to us as well in those areas so that we can form this generation is crucial. So Lent could be a time for folks to give to us if needed.
Absolutely. And we're happy to invest that for you. So those perpetual gifts, right, to CALL.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. Matthew, I just want to thank you so much for your time. I'm grateful for us being able to chat today. And I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you'd like more content like this, please consider joining CALL as a member. For more information on CALL membership, please contact administration at call-usa.org. Be on the lookout for more webinars such as this in the future. And we're both praying for you this Lenten season, and we hope you all have a great week. God bless.
Thank you very much, Rosie.